Welcome to Pen and Perspective, where the story always knows more than it's telling. Every word is intentional. Every silence holds a truth. Let's get into it. People think being the baby means you're soft. They think being the only girl means you were shielded, spared, handed things without earning them. They see the way our parents looked at me, the way my father's voice always gentled when he said my name, and they assume I floated through childhood untouched. They don't see what it's like growing up with two brothers. Warren first, loud, certain, always right even when he wasn't. He wore responsibility like armor and liked how it made him look. Walter came next, quieter, watchful, the one who listened more than he spoke, who noticed things and carried them without asking if they were his to hold. And then there was me, the last, the girl, the one everyone checked on without realizing I was checking back. I learned early that being loved didn't mean being protected. It meant being expected. Our mother raised us to be seen. Appearances mattered. How you entered a room, how you carried a conversation, how you left without giving too much away. My father raised us to be disciplined, measured. He didn't talk much about his job, but we felt it in the house, the order, the restraint, the unspoken rule that you never embarrass the family because the world is already waiting for a reason. Walter was always the one I watched closest. Not because he needed it, he didn't, but because he moved through life like someone who didn't realize how much weight he carried for other people. He made space, took on problems, smoothed things over. I saw that long before Sandra did, long before the friend group ever named it. I protected him not by hovering, but by staying sharp, by noticing who leaned too hard, by remembering slights he waved off. Being the baby gave me access. People talked around me, forgot I was listening. The first time I saw Sandra with him, I knew. Not because she doted, not because she followed his lead, but because she understood him. She asked questions that mattered. She paid attention to the spaces he was stretched thin. She didn't try to be impressive. She tried to be useful. She matched him, steady, capable, present. That mattered to me more than grand gestures ever could. That's love where I come from. The night everything shifted, I was asleep. My phone rang just after 1 in the morning. Not a text, a call. The kind that makes your body wake up before your brain catches up. Sandra. At 1 a.m., my stomach sank as I answered. There had been an accident. Walter was at Cedars. I threw on clothes, grabbed my keys, and drove through the empty streets with my hands steady on the wheel and my mind already bracing for impact. Whatever this was, I knew one thing for sure. My brother needed me, and I was already on my way. Update 1. I don't remember driving home from Cedars. I remember the steering wheel under my hands. The radio still playing something soft and stupid. The way the city looks different when you're carrying something you can't put down. Walter didn't want Dad called. He was sitting up in the bed, bruised and annoyed. When the officers came in and said they were placing him under arrest, I felt something in my chest split clean open. I drove straight to my parents' house. By the time I walked in, Dad already knew. He was standing in the living room, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up like he'd been bracing himself for something he couldn't fight. My mother crossed the room first and wrapped me up so tight I almost cried. They didn't ask me what happened. They hugged me because I was the one who had been there. Dad didn't pace, didn't rant, didn't make calls. He just said, I can't be involved. Not I won't, I can't. That was when it really landed. Because my father understands systems. He understands process. He understands when something is moving too fast and too clean to be accidental. And he also understands that his badge is not protection in moments like this. It's a liability. My mother sat on the couch, smoothing invisible wrinkles in her robe, already thinking about whispers and headlines and the way our name would be said if this went the wrong way. She's not cruel, she's careful. There's a difference. They asked me what Walter said, how he looked, whether he was scared. I told them the truth. He was pissed, I said, and confused and trying not to worry anybody. That's always been Walter's curse. Growing up, Warren was the example. Walter was the question. And I was the answer to a question that never really got asked, just understood. And sitting in my parents' living room at nearly 4 in the morning, I noticed something else too. Nobody was talking about an investigation. They were talking about damage control. They knew Walter didn't do what he was being accused of, but they also knew that didn't matter very much in this town. They shifted into controlling what they could control, almost like Walter wasn't even a part of the problem. That's when I knew this wasn't going to resolve itself without someone willing to stay angry long enough to remember everything. She stands by the door longer than she needs to, hand on the knob, listening to the quiet behind her. Her mother has gone to lie down, exhaustion finally winning. Her father is still at the dining table, suit jacket draped over the chair like a skin he peeled off, but hasn't put away yet. He hasn't moved since she hugged him. He was sitting with enough to carry it in his chest the way only a father can. When Ayla finally opens the door, the night air hits her sharp and cold. It feels like waking up too fast from a dream. She steps outside, pulls the door closed behind her, and exhales. This is the part nobody prepares you for. Not the shock, not the fear, the waiting. She walks to her car, slow, keys already in her hand. The street is quiet, normal. While Walter was sitting in a holding cell right now, Ayla slides into the driver's seat but doesn't start the engine. She just sits there, forehead resting against the steering wheel. Her father raised them to read rooms before they spoke, to listen for what wasn't being said, to notice patterns, not promises. He used to say, "Anybody can talk. Watch what moves when the talking stops." That lesson is humming in her bones now, because something about tonight doesn't sit right. Not the accident or the arrest. It's the speed of it, the lack of questions, the way the air shifted in that hospital room when the officers came back in. She saw it before the cuffs came out, before the words under arrest were said. She doesn't go home yet. She drives, no music, just the hum of the road and her thoughts stacking up whether she wants them to or not. Walter has always been careful, not perfect, but intentional. He built his life brick by brick, stayed boring on purpose, chose stability when chaos would have been easier. And now they're telling her he blew it all in one night? She knows better than that. By the time she does get home, she kicks off her shoes, drops her keys in the bowl by the door, and sits on the edge of her bed without turning on the light. The next few days crept by until Sandra came through like a wrecking ball. She told us she had gotten a phone call about trusting the friend group. No one knew what to do with that information, except maybe Kiara and myself. They said your name? Yes. And it didn't sound like Walter. No. Sandra looked tired, raw, still holding herself together out of necessity. I don't know what to do with that, Sandra says. You don't have to do anything yet. Just don't dismiss it. She replays faces, who leaned in, who deflected, who spoke too quickly, who got quiet at the wrong time. By the time sleep finally comes, Ayla has made one quiet decision. She's not trusting the shape of anything yet, but she's watching everything. And she's done assuming the people closest to them are the safest ones in the room. Update 2. Sandra tells me about the note the same way she tells me everything now, carefully, like she's trying not to make the thing heavier just by naming it. She doesn't call it a threat. She doesn't call it a warning. She just says, "Somebody knocked on my door in the middle of the night. When I checked, there was a note on the ground. It said, 'Keep going.'" I don't say anything at first, not because I don't believe her, because I do. I ask what time. She tells me. I ask if the cameras caught anyone. She says no. Whoever it was stood just out of frame or knew where to stand. I ask if anyone else knew she was home that night. She pauses. That pause tells me more than the answer. Sandra is many things. Careful is one of them. If she's hesitating, it's because the list of people who knew is short. I don't tell her what I'm thinking. I just tell her to take pictures of the note, front and back, to save the doorbell footage anyway, to keep it all. She says, "You think this is connected?" I don't say yes. I say, "Nothing shows up that clean unless it's answering something." That's the first shift, from fear to focus. Brian gets touched not long after. I don't hear it from him. I hear it the way you always hear these things first. Sideways, a half sentence, someone lowering their voice when your name comes up. He says he fell. Everyone knows he didn't. I don't ask him what happened. I ask where he was, what time, who knew he was there. His answers don't line up clean, but his body does. He's careful with his ribs. His jaw is tight in a way you don't get from slipping on concrete. I don't confront him. I log it. Brian isn't the center. He never was. He's a perimeter man, someone who knows just enough to be useful, not enough to be brave. That matters. I'm still thinking about the note when I talk to my father. I don't tell him about it directly. I don't have to. I ask him about timing instead. If somebody wanted to apply pressure without triggering attention, I say, would they do it all at once or stagger it? He looks at me for a long second before he answers. "Staggered," he says. "You create uncertainty first, then confirmation. You want people guessing whether it's connected." "And if the goal wasn't punishment," I ask, "just movement?" "Then you touch the ones who hesitate," he says. "Not the loud ones, the quiet ones." That sits in my chest. I don't ask him anything else, because he can't give me anything else, and because I already know enough. Dante gets touched later, not immediately. Later enough to matter. That's when the shape locks in. Brian first, Dante second. Both men who orbit the center. Both men who benefit from confusion. Both men who knew something before the rest of us did. This isn't rage, it's calibration. I don't need to see who did it. I need to understand who could. Larry's name doesn't jump out loud, it drifts. Someone mentions him like they always do, casual, familiar, like he's always been there, which he has. Larry's been around longer than most of us. Not part of the group, but adjacent to it. The kind of person you don't ask too many questions about because the answers come with strings. I don't call him. I don't ask Kiara about him. I just start lining up timelines. Who spoke to who? Who went quiet? Who suddenly didn't seem surprised? Larry doesn't make decisions. He makes things possible. That distinction matters, which means if his people moved, it's because someone asked them to. I think about Kiara, her stillness, her restraint, the way she never asks questions she hasn't already answered. I don't feel betrayed. I feel aligned because Kiara didn't act out of impulse. She acted out of conclusion. And if she's moving like this now, it means she's been sure for a while. I don't tell Sandra what I figured out. I don't tell my father. I don't tell the group. I don't confront Kiara. I do one thing. I stop being surprised. And that's when I know I've crossed into something new. Whatever this is, it's already in motion, and the people who are still reacting are behind. I'm not behind, I'm watching, and I'm waiting to see who moves next. Final update. My phone started vibrating on the counter while I was rinsing a mug. Not a single buzz, not a casual notification, a rapid, frantic pulse, like something was wrong and everyone knew before I did. I glanced at the screen, annoyed more than concerned at first. Group chat, missed calls, texts stacked on top of each other so fast the names blurred. Sandra, Terrell, Kiara. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked it up. The headline loaded before I was ready, and my phone slipped out of my hand. It hit the floor hard enough to crack the corner of the case, but I didn't reach for it right away. I just stood there, staring down at the words like they'd rearrange themselves if I waited long enough. They didn't. Walter's name was everywhere, not hinted at, not danced around, printed in bold, unmistakable letters, framed, set up. His arrest laid out piece by piece with timelines, paperwork trails, and quiet favors that didn't look quiet anymore once someone bothered to line them up. No names beyond his, just descriptions. A cousin who fit the image, a friend whose signature mattered, a business that benefited the most. My stomach dropped, not because it was unbelievable, but because it was too precise to be a guess. I scrolled slower now, hands steady even though my chest wasn't. Each paragraph felt like a light switching on in a room I'd been standing in the dark for months. I hadn't known this was coming, not even a hint, which is what made one thing snap into place so cleanly it almost hurt. Kiara. Not in a guilty way, in a strategic one. If Kendall had written all this, Kiara had fed it, verified it, stripped it down to what could survive daylight. And nobody had told me because nobody thought I needed to know. I didn't take that personally. I took it seriously. I picked my phone back up and read it again. This time as a sister, as a witness, as someone who had sat in hospital rooms and courtrooms and listened to people speak around the truth without ever touching it. By the time I finished, my shock had settled into something colder. 2 days later, Dante was arrested. I watched how people reacted when that news broke. That night, Tyler flew in. I knew he was coming before anyone announced it. Family information moves on a different frequency. He texted me from the airport. I'm here. We met up the next evening at Harold and Bell's. Same red booths, same low lighting that makes everybody look softer than they feel. Tyler looked older than the last time I'd seen him, but not tired. Grounded. Like someone who had learned how to live without asking permission. He hugged me first. Still holding everybody together? He asked quietly, like it wasn't a joke. Somebody has to, I said. You look good. You always say that. Because you always do, I said. I'm glad you're here. I respect you for it. He nodded, eyes dropping to his plate. She made choices. She did, I said, and she's going to have to carry them. But she won't be alone, he said. No, I agreed. She won't. That was the thing about Tyler. He could hold love and accountability in the same hand. The next morning, Taylor was arrested. That one landed quieter in me. Not because it hurt less, but because by then, the line had already been crossed. I thought about her parents, about how betrayal doesn't start with the act. It starts with the environment that makes it feel reasonable. How I was sitting with the son they threw away, while the daughter they put on a pedestal fucked everything up. The investigation reopened that same week. Pressure does what morals can't. Walter was released pending further review, and when he came home, the house felt different, not lighter, just less compressed, like the walls had stopped closing in. We sat together more after that, talked less, said what needed saying without dressing it up. He told all of us we needed to meet with Brain. There was a collective boy fuck you in the air. After laughing hysterically, he asked us to trust him with 30 minutes. When we sat down for Brian to finally explain himself, not excuses, not deflection, the whole truth, laid out slow and uncomfortable. I watched the room when I told him I forgave him, really forgave him. Sandra's eyes widened. Michelle looked confused. Someone actually laughed like they thought I was joking. I don't trust you, I told Brian calmly, but I believe you did the right thing when it mattered. No one else pulled the trigger for Walter but you, and that counts. He didn't argue, just nodded, eyes wet, like he hadn't expected grace from me of all people. When we were leaving Harold and Belle's, I caught up with Kiara. Then I said, casually, "Remind me to send Larry something nice." She froze, just for a second, but I saw it. She looked at me, really looked this time. I met her gaze, steady. "Just because I didn't act like a firecracker," I said, "doesn't mean I didn't move like one." Silence settled, not heavy, respectful. Walter looked back. A small smile touched his mouth. Kiara exhaled, slow. "Guess we should stop underestimating each other." I nodded. We should have never started. This was the first time since the night my phone rang after 1 in the morning. Everything finally felt aligned. 3 nights later, we're at Walter's house. Not the living room, the kitchen. Late, lights low. The kind of quiet that only exists when everybody in the room understands the stakes and nobody feels the need to perform. Walter's laptop is open at the head of the table. Kiara's sits to his right. Mine is in front of me, untouched except for the glow of the screen. Names, addresses, connections, cleanly laid out. No commentary, no opinions. Just facts, stacked on facts, stacked on facts. Sandra is asleep down the hall. That matters. This isn't about protecting her from the truth. It's about protecting her from the weight of decisions she shouldn't have to carry. I scan the screen again, slower this time. I'm not looking for who makes me angry. I'm not looking for who deserves it most. That's how people get sloppy. That's how you miss things. I'm looking for patterns. Who was always adjacent but never named? Who signed but never spoke? Who benefited without fingerprints? My father taught me that silence is never empty. It's usually hiding something useful. I stop scrolling. The room doesn't change, but the air does. Walter notices. He always notices. Kiara clocks it a half second later. I lean forward and point at the screen. Right there. Walter follows my finger. Kiara does too. Neither of them speaks. "That one," I say. My voice is calm. No heat, no rush. If we're moving, this is where it starts. Walter studies the name like he's memorizing it for later. Kiara tilts her head, already running it through her mental map. After a moment, Kiara nods once. "Yeah," she says, "that tracks." Walter closes the laptop gently, like he's putting something to sleep instead of waking it up. No one celebrates. No one congratulates anyone. There's no sense of victory in the room. Just alignment. I lean back in my chair, finally letting myself breathe. This isn't about revenge. It's not even about justice in the way people like to say it. It's about precision. And for the first time since all of this started, I know exactly where to aim.
Epilogue. Larry had learned early that you don't get to choose where you're born, only how long you pretend it doesn't matter. Inglewood raised him whether he liked it or not. Bloods ran through his family tree the same way arthritis and bad knees did. Uncles, cousins, neighbors who doubled as godparents. Red wasn't a color in his house, it was context, it was history. It was the price of staying alive when everybody else expected you to pick a side. Larry never had the stomach for it. That wasn't rebellion. It was honesty. His people knew it too. Nobody tried to force him into a lane he couldn't hold. They just adjusted, kept him close enough to be protected, far enough to stay clean. You don't have to bang to be affiliated. Blood don't ask permission. What Larry did have was access, memory, trust, and a reputation for not talking more than necessary. That's how he survived. Kiara came into his life before any of this. Ninth grade, same bus route for a year before either of them said more than what's up. She clocked him the way sharp people do, not by what he said, but by what he didn't. He clocked her the same way. She moved clean, thought ahead, never postured. She never asked him for anything, and that mattered. So when her name came across his phone years later, long after everybody else had moved into careers and marriages and respectable lives, he already knew it wasn't casual. She didn't explain much. She didn't have to. She said two names, Brian first, then Dante. She didn't say what she wanted done. She didn't say how. She just said she knew something was wrong and that it needed to stop. Larry didn't ask questions that would make things heavier. He didn't offer opinions. He told her he'd call her back. Then he drove. There was only one person he trusted with something like this, his brother. The one everybody else knew better than to underestimate. The one who never needed instructions spelled out. The one who understood that doing something personally was sometimes the cleanest way to end it. Larry told him what needed to be known, no more. His brother nodded, said he'd handle it. He didn't ask who ordered it. He didn't ask why now. He didn't outsource it to nobody who would talk later. Both times. Larry never followed up. He didn't need confirmation. Silence was the confirmation. After the second one, after everything felt like it was tightening instead of loosening, Larry went for a drive. No destination, just movement. The city late at night always told the truth if you let it. That's when he saw her, standing under a flickering streetlight like she belonged there. Red Ralph's polo, black work pants, name tag catching the light just enough to read L. Monroe. Braids neat, pulled back, not a hair out of place. She wasn't looking lost, she wasn't looking scared. She was looking at him, not angry, not curious. Something closer to recognition. Like she'd seen him before, or maybe like she'd expected him to pass through eventually. There was a softness to it that didn't read as kindness, more like acknowledgement. Larry slowed without meaning to. By the time he blinked, she was gone. No footsteps, no shadow moving away, just empty sidewalk and the hum of the city filling the space she'd been standing in. His chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with fear. He drove home slower than he meant to, mind replaying faces he couldn't place, and moments that never fully happened. Some people pass through your life like markers, not warnings. You didn't run from them. You noticed them. Marcus had stopped asking if the case was compromised a long time ago. The flash drive hadn't shocked him. It hadn't flipped a table or blown anything open. What it did was quieter, more useful. It answered timing. He sat at his desk late, a legal pad off to the side, with nothing but arrows and dates and names that never appeared together in public records. He already knew the what. What had happened to Walter? What had been rushed? What had been skipped? What the drive gave him was the how. Paperwork that moved too clean. Approvals that landed hours earlier than policy allowed. A zoning adjustment that predated a traffic report. A dispatch reroute logged as routine but timed like intent. Nothing illegal on its face. That was the elegance of it. But once you laid the documents side by side, once you tracked who touched what and when, a pattern emerged that didn't belong to chance. Marcus didn't need the drive to tell him who benefited. He needed it to tell him who couldn't have acted alone. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, fingers steepled under his chin. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised anymore. He felt oriented, because what the drive confirmed was something he'd learned early in life, long before titles and committees and closed-door meetings. And some people don't need to be loud to be powerful. And some people don't move with emotion. They move with systems. Out there, quietly, people were moving. People who understood pressure and patience. People who knew how to bend process without breaking law. Marcus didn't feel threatened by that. He understood it. He knew the language, knew the difference between chaos and coordination. The questions the drive answered were enough to tell him where not to push publicly and where to apply pressure privately, which threads to leave alone for now, Which ones would unravel on their own if given time? It didn't solve everything, but it solved what mattered. Marcus ejected the drive, slid it back into his drawer, and locked it. Not because he was afraid of it being found, but because it had already done its job. The board was clearer now, and clarity, Marcus knew, was more dangerous than certainty. You've been listening to Pen and Perspective. If it sat in your spirit, let it linger. If it stirred something in you, don't ignore it. I'm Miana DK. And before I put my pen down, tell me, whose perspective should I sit with next?